Good morning. Namaste. This is Timothy Halloran with a belated weekly forecast. Yes, today is Thursday, October 1st. Typically, I like to put these out on a Monday, so we have a little bit of catch-up to do appropriately, as I think a lot of the energy that we might be feeling this week has a lot to do with picking up, piecing together, trying to put our heads back on straight and figure out what is going on. As we are coming out of this recent lunar eclipse that was this past weekend on Sunday, and this lunar eclipse was in the sign of Aries, Aries being ruled by Mars. Mars is the sword. This lunar eclipse was very much like a cutting, a penetrating, a piercing, like a bullet, putting a bullet hole through the fabric of space and time. There has been a slicing, a cutting open of the very fabric of space and time. And now there is this bleeding, there is this releasing, there is this switching around. And so, this Sunday lunar eclipse, many people felt this explosion, this volcano, and sort of this changing of energy before and after the eclipse. It is as though this gun went off. That doesn't mean that things are exactly settled down. This explosion, this chemical reaction is setting off many more mini explosions and mini chemical reactions, and there's still all of this fizzling and, uncertainty, confusion. And this is a challenging time, like we talked about last week. We still have Mars and square to Saturn. That's sort of fading out throughout this week. But there is this challenge of, having to keep going forward when there can be so many challenges, so many distractions, so many feelings. A lunar eclipse really evokes the feelings. A lunar eclipse in Aries was evoking these instinctual feelings. And by the way, we're still talking about eclipses because although the new moon, which is October 12th, Monday, October 12th, we have a new moon in Libra. That's the closing of this moon cycle, this eclipse moon cycle. Those eclipses really carry into the next eclipse season, which is in March of 2016. So we're dealing with the major ramifications, the major shaking up all the way up until the new moon, October 12th. But then even so, all of this shaking, all of this changing is still causing ramifications, leading us into learning, growing, evolving, etc., really into the next 6 months. And so there is this solar eclipse in Virgo, followed by a lunar eclipse in Aries, followed by a new moon in Libra type of energy dynamic that's going on. And we talked about the Aries-Libra dynamic last week. And this was the dynamic of self and other. And what I recommended with the lunar eclipse is to make sure, despite the instinctual feelings, that we don't actually go it 100% alone. And the reason I said that is because this lunar energy was really bringing out this powerful individual sovereignty, self-autonomy, capability to do it on your own, and that is powerful. We are without a doubt harnessing that energy. We are birthing a new individual and a new power, yes. And yet simultaneously, the reason I gave that recommendation is because the feelings and the challenges could have been so intense that it can make it easy to try and kind of make it easy and just escape and run away. And things are really not that simple or easy right now. We're being brought into challenges that are really taking on a new level of depth. And this is happening in several ways. One of the most obvious is Saturn just having moved into Sagittarius. And Saturn is going to remain in Sagittarius for the next 2.5 years. Whatever sign Saturn is transiting is the sign that we are scrutinizing, that we are taking very seriously. And as a result, that sign is maturing and growing. Really maturing, though. It's a kind of character development, a growing up that is happening in the entire collective consciousness. Now, Saturn moving through Sagittarius is forcing us to confront areas that could have been murky, in particular regards to our own personal truths, our own philosophy, our own religion, who we think we are in truth, is scrutinized and being challenged now. And this is initiating a period of maturing and character developing our own truth. However, Saturn just having re-entered Sagittarius means that throughout all of this eclipse season, and we also have Mercury combust the Sun right now, which is this deeply intense mind that can be thinking very quickly, dissecting very quickly, and the easy propensity is to tighten up. This is what I've been talking about since last week, how easy it can be to tighten up, to crunch up. I've been in physical pain for the last 2 weeks because it's just been so intense. And so it's very easy to crunch up and to get defensive and to just try to protect ourselves because we don't really know what's going on yet. Because there is a fundamental truth that is kind of being revealed, and what's also being revealed, therefore, is the little lies that could have covered up this truth. Because sometimes big, ugly truths are scary. And this is also, playing out in the world at large. Here in America, we're going through presidential elections. We can guarantee that that's going to be part of this greater theme having to do with the covering up of truth. And now the truth is being scrutinized and being exposed. So these little lies, these little, white lies or insecurities or just covering up and putting to the side and disengaging and separating ourselves. Yes, we titled last week's video, Repairing Fragmentation. So what these eclipses have been bringing to us is the realization that we may in fact be fragmented, that there are varying parts within ourselves that may not be totally integrated harmoniously yet. Thus, the very progressive and very healing upliftment and challenge is therefore set in place by this eclipse season. The first eclipse was a solar eclipse in Virgo. The total intention of this period is for a healing of ourself and this world. What does it mean to heal? But to remove, but to dissolve, but to eliminate all of the surface level coverings that prevent us from actualizing the greater realizations that we need to realize in order to integrate all of the fragmented pieces of ourself. There is a reason for the fragmentation that goes much deeper and much more beyond than you're simply not doing it right. You're simply not loving yourself. You're simply not ascended or a divine being yet. There is a reason for the fragmentation, and we are collectively scrutinizing these reasons. Why is there a lack of harmony? Why is there parts in myself that close down, that clench up, and I feel physical pain as a result of this clenching up? And that physical pain and that clenching up is a defendingness. It is a separation, a fragmentation. And so Mars, the lunar eclipse, was this cutting through, and now everything is kind of crumbling and dissolving, and is going to be crumbling and dissolving really for the next 2 weeks until the new moon in Libra. And that new moon in Libra, October 12th, is going to be sowing a seed of intention for harmony, for collaboration, for working with others and ourselves internally in a non-fragmented way. And so these are these big long-term challenges that is simultaneously the seed planted that is going to take us very far in the future in regards to repairing these fragmentations. But we can be experiencing some of the challenge, and simultaneously we are getting the realizations. And it's interesting because oftentimes spiritual realizations, I'm just going to say realizations itself. A realization is a sudden, spontaneous, almost releasing of understanding. Like something clicks. It is in our possession. The understanding is there, it's tangible, therefore we can work with it. A realization is the clicking and the coming together of pathways which allow for this realization to happen. However, sometimes the realization is not automatically followed by all of a sudden everything being hunky-dory. And that's because the realization is this coming together and this connection of pathways which allow a signal to be transferred, and now we understand something. Ah, this was something that I was missing. This is something that I was suppressing. This was a lie that I was using to cover up a truth. This was a conditioning that was conditioned upon me by my parents, by my teachers, by my religious instructors, and it was not a total truth. There was something there that was lacking, and then a realization happens, and that kind of blows that half-truth out of the water. And this can be happening these days. Yesterday and today we have Mercury combust the Sun. This means that Mercury is moving retrograde and passing the Sun. And as he does so, he gets an update from our individual soul, from who we are, a realization, an understanding, and it takes things deeper. And Mercury is going to continue his retrograde phase until October 9th, really just another week. And this is continuing this going deeper, reflecting, remembering past relationships, past interactions, and it's in the service of this realization to be happening. And Mercury is also going to pass asteroid Juno, Black Moon Lilith, and then station on the moon's north node. As the moon's north node is transiting out of Libra come November. So this month and next month we are doing this resetting and this fundamental completion having to do with establishing a harmony within and without, collaborating within and without, creating in a way that actually works, that makes us feel good. This is all being wrapped up these weeks, leading into the new moon, leading into the moon's north node, completing its nearly year-and-a-half transit of the sign of Libra, which has been focusing on relationships, focusing on collaboration, on creativity, etc. Now, what is also happening simultaneously this week and next week is that Venus is finishing her transit of her shadow area, period, of her retrograde phase. So since July, Venus has been moving backwards through Leo. Venus has been in the sign of Leo for 4 months, doing a retrograde period since July. Venus is completing this period in the next 2 weeks. And she's also reaching now her third and final square with Saturn. The first time she squared Saturn was the end of July. This is when we were experiencing these initial challenges in relationships, in creativity. We talked about achieving a particular set of standards and how it can be challenged. And it was initiating this 4-month period that's been very honed on self, on other, on my own creativity, my own individuality, my own self-autonomy and sovereignty, and how can I contribute it to my relationships, to my friends, my partnerships, and live in a loving, harmonious way. Now this next week, Venus is coming up and into the third and final square with Saturn this time around, and that happens, let's see, October 10th. So Thursday, October 8th, Venus pushes into Virgo and is done with Leo. Squares Saturn for the third and final time, and this is about completing and really getting this final push, this final challenge to integrate our ideals, our roles, our perfections that we are seeking here. The new regiment, the new schedule that allows us to be integrated simultaneously in our truth, our individual, our self-autonomy, and yet be able to contribute to society, work with other people, distribute our truth, distribute our beauty, distribute our creativity. This has been the challenge for the last 4 months. So there's a whole lot of stuff that's going on. We can still feel the tightening, the squeezing, the being pushed, the being shoved. And this is a period where there is a lot of progress happening. And once again, the reminder is, when we are in periods of the most intensity, the most chaos, and everything feels like it's going to shit, these are the periods that will be followed with the biggest payoffs, the realizations, etc. That's one thing I want to go back to, the realizations. We are having these realizations now, like the synapse is being made, the message is being delivered, but the realization does not necessarily mean that we step into the pearly gates. Yes, we might realize, for example, that heaven is a tangible reality that exists in this world, therefore we can access heaven at any point, being eternally spiritual souls. We might have had the realization that we are an eternally spiritual soul. We might have had the experience in which that message got tangibly delivered and now we tangibly understand it. And when you possess a real wisdom or understanding, it is something that cannot be taken from you. When you understand a law of nature, that law of nature never changes. You now possess that wisdom and understanding. However, just because we understand the laws of nature, just because the message was delivered, doesn't necessarily mean that we are seated within the effulgence of what it means to be, for example, an eternal soul. We might have realized we are an eternal soul, but do we feel the eternal nature of our blissful nature all the time? We may not be there yet. So the realizations and the understanding happens first, so we can see, aha, heaven is real. I am an eternal soul. This lunar eclipse, is that there is a realization that has to do with our own power, our own sovereignty, our own authority. Aha, I can do this myself. I am what I am. I have all I need. I am capable. Being who I am is the power of this lunar eclipse. And yet now is the time where we are initiating a full year that is Virgo-centric, which is about doing the work, doing the practice, doing the new schedule, the new health regimen. We're actually doing it. And it's like chipping away at the old block. It is getting the ball rolling. And the hardest part is getting the ball rolling. Once this guy gets rolling, it gets much, much easier. You have the realization that you're an eternally spiritual soul, then you have to start getting the ball rolling. Well, I'm going to do the practices. I'm going to do the breath work. I'm going to do the meditation. I'm going to do the inner dialogues, the mental dialogues, the emotional dialogues, the past life regression, the being my own parent and talking to my own inner child, so I can constantly remember who I actually am, being an eternal soul. You have the realization. It does not immediately take you into embodying that and being seated in that realization permanently. We have to get the ball rolling. Once you get the ball rolling, once we're doing the practices daily, we're talking to ourselves in the new way, we're communicating in the new way, we're interacting emotionally in the new way, we're giving ourselves permission to change the patterns of the past to allow our practices to be new and different so we can get the ball rolling. That is where we find ourselves today. That is why the report is delayed, because getting the ball rolling is the hardest part. And it is challenging. And it can go back and forth, back and forth. You may push on this thing and you feel it move a little bit and you're just like, yeah, this thing's about to start rolling. And then it might lean back a little bit. And that's exhausting. You have to give it another push, and this is getting the ball rolling. It will start rolling. It will start unfolding. It will start becoming automatic and blissful and ecstatic and upward spiraling, and it doesn't feel so much like work as it might feel today. But this doesn't mean that the work is not a noble work. It is necessary. Following the realizations, you can go read whatever books, study whatever teachings, have whatever meditative, far-out spiritual realizations you can possibly have. You can go all the way out to the farthest planet, to the farthest corners of the universe, and see the entire universe. You will still come back here and then have to initiate the practices and get this ball rolling. So in this regard, I hope that we are feeling empowered. I hope that we know that we are the ones who can get this ball rolling, because we do have to harness our power, our energy, our strength, our capability, and our sovereignty to do this. But we can do this, and it will pay off. And in this endeavor, I am wishing absolutely the best for you and your beloveds. Namaste.